Hello, folks. I've been thinking about what David says in Psalm 16:11. He says, "You show me the path of life. In your presence is the fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore." As I thought about that, I realized every person seeks happiness. No one gets up in the morning thinking, well, today I hope I have a miserable day. Nobody greets you and says, have a bad day. No, we all desire happiness. And that's a good thing, not bad. Behind almost every decision we make is one simple thought. I think this will make me feel better. I think this will make me happy. And we may not verbally express it or even acknowledge that the desire for happiness is behind our decisions. But the reality is that we choose jobs, we choose relationships, we make purchases, we enjoy entertainment and lifestyle because we believe they will bring happiness to one degree or another. You see, God created us to be happy. Like any other father, he takes pleasure in the happiness of his children. Now, you've probably heard the saying that it takes more facial muscles to frown than it is to smile. Sounds great. It's just not true. It takes basically the same energy whether smiling or frowning. But because we were designed for happiness, smiling does have greater impact on your health. Did you know that smiling lowers stress hormones? Smiling triggers feel-good brain chemicals and relaxes the nervous system. Here's the really weird thing, is smiling improves mood even when the file is forced or cheesy at first. Even though we're making ourselves smile, it improves our mood. And before long, you find yourself smiling because you want to. So smiling really is healthier. Just not for the reason people usually say. Now, Proverbs 17:22 says, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. You see, joy and laughter actually promote healing and well-being. Prolonged sorrow and long-term heaviness affects us physically, not just emotionally. And now, in spite of these facts, far too many Christians believe if an activity is pleasurable, it must be sin. If it makes you happy, it must be wrong. But nothing could be further from the truth. If we ever were to grasp what God's desire is, the church would be the happiest place in town. Let me remind you again of Psalm 16:11. David, talking to the Lord, says, you show me the path of life. In your presence, there's fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore. The heart's craving for happiness is not the problem. In actuality, it's proof we're made from God and for God. In Psalm 115, verse 3, this verse explains the concept a little further. David writes, our God is in the heavens. He does whatever he pleases. Now, the word pleases means to desire, to delight in, or to take pleasure in. More explicitly, it means to experience emotional delight. It's the same root word used in Psalm 16:11 when David talks about pleasures forevermore. God is in heaven, and he does those things that bring him emotional delight. In his presence is the fullness of joy because he only does those things that bring him emotional delight. Now think about it. If you could do anything you pleased, would you do the things that make you happy? Doesn't that explain why we, his grandest, fullest creation, his imagers, seek happiness. Now, don't misunderstand me. Our search for happiness often leads us in the wrong places. The desire for happiness is God-given, but is often misdirected to many wrong things. Now, Blaise Pascal was a 17th century thinker, and he made great contributions in science, mathematics, philosophy, and the Christian faith. He is remembered as one of history's great minds. He helped found the probability theory. And today, 200 years later, the probability theory is still used in statistics, in insurance, science. Pascal invented the first mechanical calculator. Now, you probably won't remember it unless, for you guys that are science majors, or engineers, Pascal's law, you may have heard it in your school days. It says when pressure is applied to a fluid in a closed container, that pressure is transmitted equally in all directions. Now, this is the law that all hydraulic systems are based upon. The hydraulic brakes in your car stop that heavy piece of metal because of Pascal's law. Construction equipment using that law lift tons of weight. He was a phenomenal thinker. As a Christian thinker, he formulated the argument that we've all heard and probably used. If God exists and you trust him, you gain everything. If God exists and you reject him, you lose everything. If God doesn't exist, you lose little by believing. So listen to what he said about happiness. Pascal said, all men seek happiness. This is without exception. Whatever different means they employ, they all tend to this end. The cause of some going to war, of others avoiding it, is the same desire in both, only attended with different views. The will never takes the least step but to this object. This is the motive of every action of every man, even of those who hang themselves. You see, we seek happiness innately. Everyone wants to be happy. Every decision people make is usually aimed at one thing. I think this will make me feel better. I think this will make me happy. Whether it's relationships or money, success, comfort, or plain old pleasure, the human heart is always pursuing happiness. The problem is not the fact we seek happiness. The problem is where we're looking for it. Back in 1980, a country singer named Johnny Lee recorded a song that became #1 on the Billboard country chart. The song actually skyrocketed in popularity after it was featured in the hit movie Urban Cowboy. It became one of the most recognizable country songs of the early 1980s. And the phrase itself entered everyday language as a way to describe searching for fulfillment in the wrong things. Johnny sang, I was looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for love in too many faces, searching their eyes and looking for traces of what I'm dreaming of, hoping to find a friend and a lover. I'll bless the day I discover another heart looking for love. Now we might say the same thing about happiness. I was looking for happiness in all the wrong places, looking for happiness in other faces, searching their eyes, looking for traces of what I'm dreaming of, hoping to find a friend and a lover. I'll bless the day I discover another heart looking for true happiness. You see, we don't sin because we want pain. We sin because we're chasing happiness. We're just chasing it in the wrong place. This is exactly what King Solomon expresses in the book of Ecclesiastes. He tells us that he chased happiness in all the wrong places. He chased happiness in pleasure, in wealth, and in abundance of that, his annual intake of gold was measured in the ton, not the ounce. He chased happiness in accomplishments, entertainment, and success. And what was his conclusion? He summed it up in one simple little line: meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Or maybe in modern words would say, I tried everything people think brings happiness, and it didn't last. Have you ever tried to catch the wind with your hands? You feel it, you chase it, but you can't hold it. That's what Solomon says happiness is like. When you chase it apart from God, you feel it briefly, and it slips away. It's like being lost at sea and dying of thirst. You dip your cup into the ocean and drink. For a moment, it feels like relief, but the salt water actually makes you more thirsty and weaker. A sin is like that salt water. It promises fulfillment. It promises satisfaction, but it increases emptiness. Only God gives living water. Always remember, God is not against your happiness. He designed it. He created us in his image, and he only does the things that bring him emotional delight. He simply refuses to let you settle for the cheap substitutes to true happiness. Now, the Puritans weren't exactly known as a funny bunch, but they did understand happiness. They said every sinful choice is really the soul choosing a smaller happiness over a greater one. Holiness is not the enemy of happiness, it's the pathway to it. Jesus said it this way: happy are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Now, we might reword that. When we see God, the world's distractions fade away and we enter into the fullness of joy. You see, happiness isn't found by arranging life perfectly. It's found by resting in God's presence. Listen to Eugene Peterson's interpretation of Jeremiah 2:13, I think it is, in the Message Bible. He says, my people have committed a compound sin. They've walked out on me. They've walked out on me the fountain of fresh flowing waters, and then dug cisterns that leak, cisterns that are no better than sieves. See, God's presence is the fullness of joy and infinite pleasures. It's a fresh spring of living water. It is always flowing, always clean, always abundant, and never limited in supply. Well, we've looked for love substitutes, happiness substitutes. Jeremiah calls them leaky cisterns. In the ancient world, a cistern was a man-made hole in a rock meant to catch rainwater. The problem with cisterns is that the water gets stale and stagnant. Not only that, but these cisterns he's talking about are cracked, so they run dry very, very quickly. You see, every heart thirsts for happiness. The question isn't if we'll seek fulfillment, it's where we'll seek it. God is saying, you're thirsty, but you're drinking from cracked wells. You're looking for happiness in all the wrong places. Jesus himself picks up Jeremiah's image when he says that he is the true source of living water. He is the source of happiness you're created for. Everything else leaks and is short-lived. Sin isn't just rebellion. It's drinking from empty wells while a fountain flows beside us. But here's the good news. God doesn't just point out our broken cisterns. He invites us back to the fountain, back to real life, back to real satisfaction, back to real happiness. The soul was never designed to store happiness. It was designed to receive it continually from God. And David expresses that thought in that most famous of Psalms, Psalm 23. David says, you prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honor me by anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. He magnifies that thought in Psalm 36, verse 8 and 9. David says, they eat the rich food in your house, and let them drink from your river of pleasure. You are the giver of life. Your light lets us enjoy life. What a picture of the abundant life Christ offers. He said, I've come that you might have life, and that life would mean happiness, and have it in abundance.